we all accounted for? No, there's one person.
I think we're missing Zoe.
She's in the bathroom, I think.
Okay. It's getting hotter, isn't it? Muggier. Maybe it's thunderstorm. Thunder and lightning.
Is it raining tonight?
I hope so. It'd be nice. It's crazy at work. It's so hot. Oh, yeah.
There we go.
Beautiful tongue, Mama.
Oh, thank you.
10.
Oh.
What did you say? What did you
Time.
Time. Oh.
Oh, 10. No, I
Dozen.
meant 10.
All right. So the life of Master Shantideva. He's if you start taking these courses, you'll find that he is a big hero in many different ways, all the way through the courses, from Sutra all the way up to the highest Tantra. Master Shantideva is like a big guy, big hero. So we know that he was born around 700 AD, as I was saying earlier. And actually in this reading, there's a really nice little biography of his life in here, which is more detailed than what we're going to present. But he was born in the area of Bodh Gaya, which is northeast India, where the Lord Buddha himself achieved enlightenment. And he was born into a royal family, which is significant. And I think most of us in this room, well, even myself I can say, it's probably hard to relate to what that meant at that time. Because like a king in India at that time, it wasn't like a prime minister or a president or anything like that in this time. A king in that time, they owned everything in their territory, right? They could walk into your house and say, I like your whatever. It belongs to me. And I think that included your partner. I think that included, it was all inclusive, right? So this was the kind of family that Master Shantideva was born into. And in the reading, they say he actually chose his birth, but we're not going to go into that right now. So, and his mother was said to be an emanation of Vajrayogini. And if you have never heard of the name Vajrayogini, Vajrayogini is, there's a whole practice that revolves around Vajrayogini, and she's like a female emanation of enlightenment, of an enlightened being. And his mother was supposedly an emanation of her. So get this. So this is the kind of being Master Shantideva was. At the age of 6, he met a tantric teacher. Okay, well, we're playing Slinky. He met a tantric teacher of secret Buddhism, and he taught him the practice of Manjushri. So Manjushri is the Buddha of wisdom. So he is a okay, put it this way. So he was given the practice to meet Manjushri. So what's important to know about the practice to meet Manjushri is, if you're going to meet Manjushri fully and totally, that's going to mean you're going to meet and become Manjushri. Okay? And that's what a sadhana is for. So he was given a sadhana. So it's a specific practice. And you do specific things. And you do it every day, and you do it hard. And you push your mind into this place where you meet a divine being face to face. If you meet a divine being face to face, you're very, very close to being a divine being, okay? And Manjushri is said to be the epitome of wisdom, the wisdom side of the teachings of Buddha's, Lord Buddha's, or an enlightened being's emanation. So, and he did that. He did the practice, and he did meet Manjushri. And you can think of everything that you're doing as a sadhana. Really, it's not like, it's not like you're going to get handed, or maybe you will, but it's not like you have to think of it as you get this one little circular thing on a plate. It says, okay, this is my sadhana to meet. You are, if you're practicing any of this at all, you are doing a sadhana and you are trying to meet someone. And that's all that's really going on, really. If, because essentially, oh God, essentially, you're meeting someone every day because you're a projection. So the self that you meet is born of the sadhana that you have done, that you have been doing, right? And so you change your sadhana, right? You change your sadhana, you live the Bodhisattva's way of life, you change your sadhana. Suddenly you meet a different you. And you look in the mirror and you see a different you. Maybe nobody else will see it, but that's your sadhana. So you meet and you become. You meet and you become. And so you are meeting and becoming every single day, and if you break it down, every single moment. So it's not impossible. It's totally attainable, and in fact, you're doing it all the time. You just need to change your sadhana. That's really how it works. So he was given a specific sadhana to elevate himself to a specific state and meet a specific state of being and become. So he pulled that off at a very young age, okay? So he worked on it really hard. He met Manjushri directly, took teachings from Manjushri directly, because as we were saying before, you have the ability to go into deep states and go to realms and get teachings directly from enlightened beings. This can happen for you. So he was doing that at a very young age. At a certain age, his father passed away. And the people of the kingdom begged him to step up and be king. Which, this all also smacks of his karma, of his mind. Because his karma was such that his whole world begged him to be king, right? It's not like there had to be an election or anything. It's like they begged him, please step on the throne and be king. And but he didn't want to be king. He had his interests elsewhere. But because he was a bodhisattva already, in the ways that you will see, like sort of hidden underneath the surface, he knew that it would upset many people if he said no. And that's pretty much the opposite of what a bodhisattva wants to do, is see people upset. So he agreed. He said, okay, I will be king. And when he agreed, then that night he had a dream. And in the dream, he saw the throne, the king's throne. And in the dream, Manjushri was sitting on the throne. And so Master Shantideva, well, it wasn't his name at the time, but in his dream he walks up to the throne and he says, well, I have to get on the throne. And Manjushri says to him, you can't get on the throne, your teacher's on the throne. And so he took that as a sign that he shouldn't be king and that he should pursue what Manjushri had been teaching him all along. So he ran away. He ran away that morning, actually. And he ran away and people were looking for him and he was gone. So that's the first little segment of
His life.
Master Shantideva's life. Yeah.
Really cool. Can you imagine at 6? Talks about his seeds. So where he ran away to was the Nalanda monastery, which was the biggest, highest academic institution in India in its day. It was very, very famous in ancient India. And he started to study there. So he took his vows to leave the home life and then started to study to become a monk. And again, because of his seeds, because of his karma, everything he studied, he grasped immediately. All the layers, all the different levels that you possibly could. So he became a great scholar very, very quickly. But he never let on. He never let on that he had this incredible capacity and this incredible ability and intelligence. He just led a very, very quiet life. And he decided very early on in his monastic career that he wouldn't reveal himself to anyone. And, as Lama John said, he's already reached very high levels of being a bodhisattva even before he got to Nalandra, right? Like when he was going to accept the throne initially for the sake of all the beings who asked him, he was already a bodhisattva, right? So, and we're talking about the official levels of a bodhisattva. I think those of you who have studied for a while here and have your bodhisattva vows, we're given big fat training wheels, right? But you don't actually become a card-carrying bodhisattva until you have your direct perception of emptiness. And then you're on the first level, and you move up to 10 levels. Now, they don't actually tell us where on these levels he was, but he was a very high level, according to the story of his life. So as a very high bodhisattva, he would have seen very amazing things. Well, obviously, his teacher was Manjushri, right? Manjushri himself. So, but to the public, to his peers in the monastery, it just appeared that he just ate, slept, and pooped. So, went to the bathroom. So he became known by a Sanskrit name called Busuku.
Busuku.
Busuku. Mr. Three Thoughts. The three thoughts of eating, sleeping, and going to the bathroom, basically. Now, Nalandra was very, very famous with some very, very highly realized scholars. So there were, they say that half of the population there were so evolved they could read minds. So they knew he wasn't a Busuku. But the other half, he just appeared as a normal schmucky guy who seemed a bit of a loser and a bit of a waste of space, But so the other word for him is Dushe Sumbawa.
Dushe Sumbawa.
Dushe Sumbawa is interesting. It's a word that means that you appear to be a big goof-off, but you're not. So the Busuku is the derogatory term, and a Dushe Sumbawa is what these, the higher monks, the ones who really knew who he was, would think of him as, or would call him, because on the outward appearance, he didn't seem to be doing much, but underneath was this high-level bodhisattva, right? So Nalandra was like the equivalent to, say, Harvard, or, one of the Ivy League universities. And so for the people who couldn't see this, for the majority of the monks who were there on a day-to-day basis, they felt that having a Busuku in their midst was a real embarrassment to the institution. And they decided that they needed to expel him somehow, to get rid of him. But they're all monks, right? Like, it's not really a nice thing to think that you're going to kick someone out for not doing anything. Like, he wasn't breaking any major vows. He was just quietly minding his own business, but not seeming to accomplish very much. So they thought that the best way to get rid of him would be to embarrass him. And there's lots of different rituals in a monastery. One of them is where they appoint or ask a monk to do a very major recitation. So they thought they would embarrass him by asking him to basically perform at one of these ritual events. And they went to him, this group of monks that were trying to oust him, and they formally beseeched him to be the reciter for the next event. And he first turned them down, saying, no, I'm not very good at it, prefer to be in the background. And they said, no, please, come on. So he said, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'll try. So they prepared the temple, and we're talking like thousands of monks come to this thing, okay? And they prepared a teaching throne. These are teaching thrones, but they prepared one so high, but they didn't prepare any way to get up there. There was no steps or ladder or stairs to reach it. They just prepared this impossibly high teaching throne, thinking they'll doubly embarrass him by making him climb up, struggle to get onto the throne. And, then he'd be sweating buckets by the time he got up there, and then he wouldn't be able to recite anyway. So they were just trying to embarrass him out of the monastery. So the story goes that he arrives and he approaches the throne, and it's customary to prostrate to the throne before you give a teaching. Which is kind of what we were doing at the beginning of this class. So he does that, and these monks who are wanting to see him mess up are kind of starting to giggle. And then before you know it, he's up on the throne. And they're like, how did that happen? So first, all they see is he's prostrating. The next thing you know, he's up on that throne. So it's got to kind of make you wonder who this guy is, right? But still, they're still hoping to get rid of him. So he starts and he says, would you like me to recite something you already know, or would you like me to recite something original? And they thought they would triply embarrass him by asking him to recite something original. And he proceeds to recite the entire Guide to a Bodhisattva's Way of Life. That's his teaching. So, as he's revealing these pearls of wisdom, the monks who already knew who he was weren't surprised. They were just really enraptured with what he was talking about. But these other monks are starting to get a little nervous, oh my God, this guy knows what he's talking about, and oh my God, it's brilliant. And they're really desperately trying hard to pay attention. But as he gets deeper and deeper into the recitation, and it's in many, many chapters, there's some debate, right, as to whether there's 9 or 10 chapters. But as he gets deeper into the telling of this guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, as he gets around the 9th chapter, he starts to levitate. And he's rising higher and higher off the throne into the rafters. So there's some monks who can kind of keep up with him. Their minds can kind of keep up with him. And then he floats up and off, but there are some monks who are still so highly realized they can still hear him, even though he's now hundreds of miles away, because he's still finishing his recitation. And then before you know it, story's over, everyone kind of wakes up and he's gone, and they're thinking, what was that? Where did he go? We've just made a horrible mistake, right? So that was the end of the teaching, the recitation, and these thousands of monks are left just trying to piece together what they've just heard, right?
Right. So
that's the second phase of the story. There's more.
Gone.
Yeah.
So he's gone. And so then those monks at Nalanda Monastery, but they were all very extraordinary monks. And at that time, a lot of them had what you would think of as total recall. So they can just verbatim just write down or say what he had said, right? So then they immediately gather around and they start
writing it down
what he said. And because it was on so many levels, that there were some monks who could understand some stuff, some monks who heard some stuff, some monks who didn't, and some who were clairvoyant who also heard other things. And so some monks would say, well, actually, no, you guys missed a whole chapter. You did a whole other chapter. And then, no, we didn't hear this whole other chapter. No, you heard this whole other chapter. So there was all this argument about whether or not he actually taught a 9th and a 10th chapter, whether it was only 9 or whether there was 10. And apparently that became a split of people who thought that, no, he had 10 and no, he had 9. But what they really needed to do was find Busuku. So they did what they could to write everything down. And because also in the teaching, actually we'll get to that in a minute, they decide they have to find this. They have to find him. So then they hear he's off somewhere in northern India.
Southern, I thought.
Southern India?
But they send out a search party.
Yeah, they send out a search party. South India, right. Hundreds of miles away. And so they send out search parties to find him. And they do find him. These 2 monks find him. They find him at a stupa called Pelyun Chen. And he's just sitting there meditating. And then they start, dude, we're really sorry about calling you all those names.
Major prostrations, major offerings.
Yeah, would you please come back? And would you please teach us? And also, while he was reciting his book, while he was there, he also mentioned that he'd also written these other books. One called A Collection on Trainings, and another one, two books. One called Collection of Trainings, and one on a commentary on the sutras, which is called the Sutra Samuchaya. So he wrote those as well. So they begged him for, please teach us that, and also teach us the Bodhisattva's, the guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life.
It's a mouthful.
Yeah, and he said, you know what, I'm not coming back, but I will teach you. And so that's what he did right there. He taught them everything right there. And they didn't have like iPhones and MP3 players, right? I mean, so that's a big responsibility.
And Ustream podcasts. Right.
they just, I guess, okay, they soaked it up and went back. But he also said,
by the
way, I also have written copies in the rafters of my room. And so they went to the rafters of his room, and he found in all the tiny pieces of paper everything for everyone. And so that is the book that we're studying. They found in the rafters, according to history.
Yeah.
So then he goes through a period of his life, Master Shantideva, where he becomes one of the first, they're calling like socially active monks. And he would go into meditation, do meditations, and he would ask the question, where can I go? What can I do to help the most amount of people? And he would have visions, and then he would go and help and perform miracles, they say. And people that were thirsty, hungry. There's some beautiful stories in your reading about stopping some things that were happening. I think there was a king and the queen who were being attacked, and he actually saves them. And he sends like light out of his eyes and does all kinds of stuff like that, and gives them food and clothing from a distance, So, and also what he became very well known for is he went around and he would publicly debate anyone who was teaching what he saw as wrong Buddhism. So, for instance, a very, very typical wrong idea in Buddhism is, remember when Lama Sherri was holding up the pen and saying, well, the pen is empty of self-existence. And then so a person can get this wrong idea in their head that, well, since everything's empty, then nothing matters. And that's a wrong teaching, and it's a wrong idea. And in fact, exactly the opposite is true. It's more like, because it's empty, then everything matters. So he would go around and he would, how would you say, challenge these people in an open public debate. And then, of course, he would always win. And there's a story, they say that actually one time he was beating someone quite badly, and they were a magician. So then it became like a magic show, and there was a magic contest.
He still won.
And he still won, apparently. And there's many stories of wherever he goes, eventually everyone realizes who he really is. He always goes in and he's like, plays the guy who knows nothing, and then eventually everyone finally figures it out that he's this great master. And so this is a teaching. This whole story has been a teaching about what a bodhisattva is and how we're supposed to behave, right? So
in the world.
In the world.
So, one of the reasons for studying his life, right? Is to do just that, to follow his example, to walk through the world as a bodhisattva on the inside. You don't have to tell anybody what you're doing. In fact, it's better if you don't.
Be busuku.
Be a busuku. Just do it, right? And as Lamajan just said, he really sincerely looked for what was needed in the world, and then did what he could to help all beings, right? He was the master of just appearing normal. Just appearing like a plain old guy, right? This book, The Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, is designed for your life where it is now, to be used where you are right now, and to take you all the way. So there's no change required in your circumstances. And it is all about how you're going to live your life on the inside. It's really structured around what's called the 6 perfections. This is the code of a spiritual warrior. And so we're going to go over now the basic structure of Master Shantideva's book, which really is advice for how we could ideally structure our lives.
Right. So we're going to outline the 10 chapters for you. That's how we're finishing off the class.
And there are 10, by the way. That was decided in the...
we got to 10.
Yeah.
So the first chapter say Jangchup,
Jangchup,
Ki, Semki, Penyun. So this is saying that the function of the first chapter is to get you excited about the Bodhisattva's mind state, right? To get you stoked up on bodhicitta. So bodhicitta means the mind that inspires to be an enlightened being for the sake of everybody else, for the sake of every other living being. And I'm not going to repeat this because we said this earlier in class, but it's like becoming a true warrior. Becoming a true warrior, because to see yourself as a totally enlightened being, you need to go to task upon the things that prevent you from seeing yourself as such. Really, that's it. You can't... there couldn't be a way... There couldn't be a way that you could build your enlightenment in a way that it could be sustainable if it was something that you could produce. It has to be born of something that you take away. The only way that your enlightenment could be something that could last, it has to be born of a cessation. It has to be born of something not being there. And so, as the warrior, you go to town on the things that are convincing you that you are not an enlightened being. And then you beat those things, they disappear, and then you see yourself as an enlightened being. That's a very short story on the process, but it should give you an idea of that. It's not that you have to... It's not that there's something you can become. It's more like there's something that you have to stop being in order to be fully what you are. Right? Or else it would just run out of steam. It's kind of a way to look at it. But anyways, the first chapter is all about getting stoked on becoming that so that you can drive the ball home. And also, those of you who are familiar with the Lam Rim, Steps on the Path, this chapter also covers the first 2 stages of the Lam Rim, which is for lower scope practitioners and medium scope practitioners. But that's a bit of a long story, so that's all that needs to be said right now.
And if you were in ACI 9, we just did the Lam Rim in the last 3 classes, so you can go back to your notes to check on the first 2 steps. We're talking about not the step of finding your lama and then everything else, but the actual, remember how it goes into the lower, medium, and greater scopes? Like that. Okay, say Dikpa.
Dikpa.
Shakpa.
Shakpa.
So Dikpa comes from the word that means freedom. And, freedom threatened, sorry. I was thinking of the what you're going to get to when you get over this. It comes from the word threaten, sorry, not freedom. Like, wait a minute, that's prati moksha. But, so Dikpa means threaten, and it actually specifically means bad deeds, bad thoughts. Something that you said or thought that was bad. And Shakpa is actually, it's kind of one of those onomatopoeic words. It means to split wood. So, it means to open up and bury your soul. It's kind of cool. You have to split open your heart to do away with your bad deeds. You have to really crack open your heart and just clean out all your bad stuff, right? That's pretty literal, what we need to do. And there's an inner purification that has to happen. It's an inner purification that sets up your mind to become a bodhisattva, and that is the subject of the 2nd chapter. Okay. At the very end, we're just going to give you a direct correlation between the chapters and the 6 perfections, but Geshe-la just laid it out so beautifully in terms of what each chapter means. So that's the subject matter of the 2nd chapter.
3rd chapter, say Jangchu Gi Sem Sungwa. So this is developing the mind of a bodhisattva, which comes before you act like a bodhisattva. You have to have the mind first, and then you act like a bodhisattva. And traditionally, in the old days, there was 2 ceremonies before you. There was you took a ceremony to ask to think like a bodhisattva, and then you took the 2nd ceremony to actually take the vows to act like a bodhisattva. And nowadays, it's all lumped into one. Like the vows we've done here have been one. But you can do kind of like your own little ceremony and decide, I'm gonna think like one before.
Someone want to check? Okay.
So now this Lama Sherri was saying that the last chapter was about purifying negative stuff in the mind. This chapter is about gaining good stuff for the mind. Hi. Hey, good to see you.
You came for the best part,
Yeah.
Dustin.
here.
Okay.
Right. So anyways, that chapter's full of tricks on how to collect good energy. And get rid of the negative was chapter 2. Collect good energy is chapter 3.
Yeah. Kind of sounds like the 7 limbs, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Say Bak Yu
Bakyu.
Temba. Bak Yu Temba.
Sorry, I had to do that. Bakyu Tenpa.
Bak Yu Temba. Bak Yu is actually a really hard word to translate. It's actually a word. It's an ancient Asian word for how a bride would behave when she entered her new family. It's like this sense of service and honor and all of that. So it's kind of a loaded word, and it's the type of care you need to give your baby bodhisattva mind to protect it and to nurture it and to give it the space to grow strong in these practices. And that's the next chapter is devoted to that.
Yeah. That's what you use your Dharma friends for.
Yeah.
You're like, I really want to yell at that person. And then your friend said, don't yell at him.
You don't want to do that.
So the 5th chapter, say Shishin
Shishin
Sungwa.
Zunghua.
So Shishin is a state of mind especially useful in meditation. And you can think of it as like the alarm button, which is going to tell you when you're off the object, right? So in the case of acting like a bodhisattva or being in the world like a bodhisattva, it has a double meaning. It has developing a mind that is watching you so that lets you know if you're off your object in meditation, but it also, as you walk through life, it's an alarm that lets you know if you're suddenly not acting like a bodhisattva, right? And I'm supposed to be this guy that's like trying to save myself and all beings, and I just took the last donut, right? Like, that's like this little alarm that is
That goes off.
it goes off, yeah.
Does it always work?
Well, there's a snooze button, so hopefully it will work.
Say sopa.
Sopa.
Sometimes mispronounced as zopa, like lama zopa. But sopa, you can translate it as forbearance or patience. And it's very specifically about the art of not getting angry. It's the art of not getting upset or angry, especially when things are not going well.
What's the kind of artist you want to be? Not getting angry artist.
So that's the whole topic of one chapter,
Yeah.
all about that.
Chapter 7, say Tsundru
Tsundru
Tenpa.
Tenpa.
Tenpa just means chapter.
Yeah, in case you were wondering.
Yeah. So Tsundru means joyous effort. So this is a whole chapter on joyous effort. So that means being really stoked about doing good things.
It's virya in Sanskrit.
Yeah, like getting really happy about doing mighty good deeds. And it's like what they say, spending 6 hours working on your carburetor is not joyous effort. It's like they would say that's effort, but not joyous effort. Joyous effort would be, I don't know, preparing to teach tonight's class or something like that, right? No matter what was going on, you're just really excited about teaching the class. That would be like joyous effort, right? Like that.
Which one did you just do? That one.
You're on your
Samten.
Samten.
Tenba.
Tenba.
Do you guys recognize the word samten? Samten. It's from meditation, actually. It means meditation. It's that platform of meditation that you need to reach to meditate deeply. And it is that platform. Oh, God, Lama Raja can say it so well. Samten something near Chokmitopme or something like that.
I don't know.
There's this long Tibetan phrase for it translates to the first level of the form realm, and that's the platform upon which your mind needs to get to see emptiness directly. So that's for short Samten, and it's the title. The chapter on Samten Tenba, is the 8th chapter, right? So it's all about that special platform from which to see emptiness directly. Whole chapter devoted to that.
And chapter 9, say Sherab
Sherab.
Ki
Ki.
Liu.
Liu.
So Sherab means wisdom, and there are many kinds of wisdom. And ultimately, this chapter is going to be talking a lot about emptiness, right? How to see emptiness directly, really. The things you need to do to be able to understand directly that the pen is not coming from the pen, right? Yeah, and that's the 9th chapter.
9th chapter. And the 10th chapter, say ngoe.
No way.
It's like one of those, it's an
No.
NG, ngoe.
No way.
No.
No way.
Did you pronounce that as Lu?
Liu.
Liu. Noah Liu. Do you notice it's changed from Tenba to Liu for chapter? It switches up at the 9th. So the 9th and 10th, even the word chapter, they're using a different word. It's kind of significant. So Noe, in fact, in your books where it says dedication, it's Noah, right? So that's what this means. And this chapter is the first perfection. It's all about giving. Because in the last chapter, and it's beautiful in the guide, how he talks about the whole reason for doing this book, what it's meant to accomplish. And so it's in the dedication, the act of dedication, that he really, really teaches the art of giving. It's really cool how he does it. Because dedication, right, is where you really cement the power of all the virtue that you have accomplished. That's why we do a dedication at the end of class. You collect all of the virtue that you've collected from sitting here, from struggling with the concepts, from thinking about it, for committing to learning and studying and contemplating and debating, and sending that energy out to the world, giving that effort out so that it can be of benefit to all beings. That dedication is a powerful, powerful tool to really cement and perpetuate your virtue. So that's what this whole this is the chapter that a lot of people didn't hear, right? You know, when he was floating away and not all the monks could hear it. So it's a pretty important one. And Geshe-la asks a question at this point. So we just covered all the chapters. Did Master Shantideva actually cover all of the perfections? Because we said this was a guidebook on all of the 6 perfections, right? So, joyous effort was, actually wisdom was chapter 9, right? And meditation was 8. Concentration, meditation, well, they kind of call meditation and concentration the same thing here. Joyous effort was chapter 7. And that beautiful sopa, not getting angry, was 6. That sheshan, the guarding awareness, was 5. Does he actually cover the others?
Well, it's like you said, it's in the ethical way of life.
It's down here, yeah. Joyous effort is 7. The ethical way of life is actually in chapter 5. Okay, well, let's go in reverse order. Do this one. It's much easier.
So, just so that you know, in chapter 10 we'll have the 3 types of giving: material, protection from fear, and dharma.
This is the dedication
right?
chapter, right?
That's chapter 10. In chapter 5 we'll have the 3 kinds of ethical behavior, which is keeping your vows and undertaking behavior, which collects like the good karma we were talking, good energy. And right.
Yeah, so now we're giving it to you in the order of the perfections. So
and
the
then
first
chapter
one is
6,
giving,
that's
morality. Right. The 3rd perfection is the not getting angry.
Not getting angry, patience.
Which is chapter 6. 4th perfection is joyous effort.
Chapter 7.
5th perfection is concentration. Chapter 8. And the 6th perfection is wisdom.
So ACI 12
Chapter
will be
9.
chapter 8 and 9, and ACI 11 will be chapter 6 and 7. And this course will be chapters 1, 2, and 3. Yeah, so it's going to take us that much course material to cover all those ideas, but we'll dive into them in a sweet way, so that you have, like, he spends a whole bunch of time on ways to think of other people so that you don't get angry, or you develop your patience and things like that. He spends a lot of time on things like that. So
Yeah. He's going to teach us how to
Yeah.
perfect the perfections
yeah,
in each of these chapters. So they're not necessarily in chronological order in the terms of the way that you understand the perfections.
yeah.
We're going to just go through the chapters in the order that he teaches it, right? Yeah.
Okay.
So that's it. So that's what we're going to get started on next week. So we have how many classes? 3 before we go away?
I don't know.
We have class to the end of this month, and then
Joyce
the
probably knows. You
first 2 weeks. 2 more? Okay, after this.
Yeah.
And then we have, for the first 2 weeks of August, the studio will be closed. And then we'll continue on the 3rd week of August with the 4th class. So we'll give you warning again on our last class before the break, but we're going to be closed for the first 2 weeks of August.
Yeah, so that was an intro class
Yeah.
to the Bodhisattva's way of life. Bodhisattva.
Guide to the
Guide to
Bodhisattva's way of
Bodhisattva's
life. We better just learn
Chumpa.
it in another language. It'll be easier. So thank you all for hanging in there. Okan's going to lead us in the dedication in English, so we know what we're saying.